Okay, let's begin. Hello, and welcome to session 3 of my IELTS instruction or instructional course. This is a course for preparing for your IELTS exam, whether general or academic. And this is your instructor, Joseph Emil. If you haven't been to the first and second sessions, I was talking about main points regarding the IELTS test, what you need to do before and during the test, including preparations and what to do, shall we say, while waiting for the test to begin, and even when you're outside the test hall. In this session, we will go on to, well, in the second section, of course, we have moved on to section 2 and 3. We began with section 3 to let's say, explain some of the strategies that need to be employed while solving section 3, in addition to some examples. Section 4 will be our topic today, in addition to some reading exercises, provided we have the time. And to be honest, it's this section, or it's the one section that I'm sure you are attending this course for. It is very difficult, and compared to the other sections, it includes the most reading as well. So there are many strategies, or not many strategies. Actually, there's one strategy that can offset this problem for you, but I have to tell you that you need your endurance. You need to be able to continue listening English, or to be able to keep your focus while listening to English for half an hour, specifically because section 4 is at the end of that half hour, and it can take anywhere between 4 and 6 minutes. And for this time, you will have one speaker speaking continuously. Anyway, how about let's just begin. Okay. All right, let's begin with our slides here and take a look at the first one. Of course, I'm reviewing exactly what we have taken. In the first lesson, the second half of the first lesson, we have taken something, or we took something about section 1. We took we learned some information, things like the nature of the first section, dialogues. They are simply dialogues between two people concerning general situations. You are expected to understand names, addresses, dates, telephone numbers, blah, 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 and so on, times of day, okay, durations, how many minutes, how many, maybe prices, okay, and it's usually, if not always, filling in blanks, okay. No multiple choice questions. I don't expect to have many multiple choice questions, or any multiple choice questions to be more correct, in the first section. But here is a problem. I don't believe that I have talked about it. Everything must be written correctly in the first section. I'm not referring to spelling mistakes. I think we have talked about this before. If the spelling mistake is or does not affect the meaning of the word, then you might get the mark. But if it does, like the difference between peace, as in part, and peace as in no war, right? If you mix up between those two words, you lose the mark. Anyway, what about everything must be right? I'm referring to telephone numbers. You must get the telephone number absolutely correct. Every single mark, or every single number of the telephone number, let's say it's about 7 or 8 numbers, or no, 6, 7 or 8 numbers, you have to get them all right. Otherwise, you lose the mark. Sadly. Okay, let's just move on to section 2, which is generally monologues. Okay, it's just one person speaking about a general situation. You would expect someone to talk about a map or an illustration. Maybe he's talking about a city map, or shall we say a tour guide talking about the map for a park. In the last session, we were at a university campus, in which people were guiding others towards certain blocks, A, B, C, D, E, okay, and they used expressions like turn left here, take the second left, or shall we say, cross this junction. Junction is when a road is joined by another road. A T-junction, it's when it's perpendicular. But if there are two roads intersecting, then it's an intersection or a crossroads. Crossroads. What about the types of exercises or the types of questions you might meet in section 2? I'm talking about filling in blanks. It's exactly like section 1, but of course it's not just completing sentences or so. It can also be labeling certain places or items in the text itself. In addition, there is multiple choice questions, MCQs. MCQs here is a multiple choice question, right? Sometimes you choose from many. I mean, you might choose one, 2 or 3 pieces of information between 7 or so, okay? And by the way, when you choose from many, don't forget to cross out your choices if there's or if they are not used more than once. Make sure to cross out your choices, or of course cross them out if they are said that they're incorrect in the sentence. So let's say someone is asking you to prepare for a certain trip, and then he tells you, please do not bring any cameras, or shall I say, taking pictures is forbidden in the museum. Okay, so make sure to cross out camera or video camera or something like that. Okay, just cross out camera. If someone told you that no eating or drinking is allowed on campus, okay, that means you cross out any items referring to food or drink. And here you need to focus on the details. All right, you need to take a look beyond the words being said. Of course, in the first exercise or in the first question, the first section, it was more or less specifically about hunting for the details. I'm not sure if I can use this expression or not, hunting for details, but you hunt or you try to find the word that most perfectly matches the space in your question, and that means you have to understand the question. But in the second section, all right, you understand the question in addition to understanding the speech, what they're talking about. Okay, there will be a lot of paraphrasing. Okay, paraphrasing, which is saying a sentence with the same meaning, but or saying the same piece of information, the same meaning in a different sentence. All right, let's not waste any more time here. Let's go on for section 3 now. It's a dialogue, mostly. Sometimes it can come as a monologue, but I've only seen it in just one exam or so, in one test or so. So it's generally a dialogue, which is a specific dialogue. I'm talking about situations that most likely occur in universities or so. Just give me one moment. Edit here. Sorry. Let's continue. So again, section 3 is concerned with dialogues regarding specific situations, such as in a university. Let's say a doctor or professor is talking with one of his students about preparing a thesis. A thesis, once again, is what you prepare at the end of your master's course. Maybe it's 2 people preparing for a project, 2 students preparing for a certain project. So they need to maybe ask some questions or conduct surveys. A survey, there's a word called survey, and there's another one called questionnaire. Questionnaire, okay? 2 N's. A questionnaire, by the way, is a survey on a paper, on a piece of paper. Actually, a survey, a questionnaire again, a questionnaire or a survey is when you ask some people questions. Let's say there's a survey about the number of people who are married in a certain country, or the number of people who smoke or drive cars. This is a survey. You are going in the street and asking the people certain questions. Excuse me, are you, or excuse me, how many cars do you have? Or, hello, could you please tell me what kinds of newspapers do you read? These are surveys. A questionnaire is a survey on paper, right? So you're given a sheet of paper, an A4 sheet of paper, and you fill in the information. Of course, there are certain questions with which you answer yes or no, or very good, 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 very bad, so on. And this piece of paper is anonymous. Anonymous is another very good word. You just write these in a board. Okay. Okay. Here. Okay. So paraphrasing also. Here we are. Sorry, I will skip some issues. And here we are, paraphrasing. And finally, we're talking about anonymous. Of course, you might remember anonymous as the hacker group, but of course I'm not talking about this. And in fact, anonymous means not known, especially referred to people. So you have an anonymous writer saying, excuse me, there's something wrong with your writing. Of course, I don't know who he is, but of course he might be protecting himself with this. Not that I can hurt him, but he is not known. He is not writing his name down to protect his anonymity. Anonymity. All right? Anonymity is the quality of not being known to people. Okay? So here is anonymity and anonymous, but this is a questionnaire. But let's just carry on. So these dialogues, when two people are preparing for a certain project, they are mainly multiple choice questions, right? The third section is mainly multiple choice questions, and that means you are to read the questions and then understand them, then listen to the conversation and understand it. You should never focus on the question only, okay? You have to try and be with the conversation. Imagine yourself in between the two speakers. Here we are. So again, dialogues are a common occurrence in the third section. I've seen an exception in just one test, okay, in which it was a monologue, but in almost every test, section 3 is about two people speaking. Perhaps a man and a woman, okay, so that you can differentiate between the voices, and they're regarding specific or academic situations like in a university or two people preparing a project. They are mainly multiple choice questions, okay? So you should expect long text. I'm not talking about reading here, I'm talking about long questions, like this, long questions to which there are three answers, or three answers or four, all right? 3 or 4 answers, and you are to choose the correct one. Be very careful not to focus on the questions only. Of course, you read the questions and understand them in addition to understanding the answers. But when the recording starts, make sure to imagine yourself in between the speakers. You are a third person in the conversation. right? Try to understand what they're saying. Try to focus on what they're saying to understand the whole situation. Okay? Otherwise, you will be forced to, or you will miss some of the information because it's mainly paraphrasing. Again, paraphrasing. They will never say the answers written in front of you. They will say the answers in their own method. So as soon as you understand exactly what they're saying, you will be able to choose the correct one, even if you haven't read it before. Okay? What about, so here, understand what the speakers are saying, not just what to answer with or which one of the choices to make. What about some training here? This is a typical multiple choice question in section 3. Here, it's usually placed like this. The exercise is divided into 2 parts. They will first play questions 1 to 5, or question 1 to 4, it doesn't matter the number, but they'll have a first part. Alright? After which they will have this second part, to which a smaller part of the conversation belongs. Alright? So first, how about we quickly read what is written here and try to understand the questions. That's the keyword. The introduction of postage stamps was considered unusual. What's unusual? It's maybe the opposite of common. No one has done it before, maybe. Okay? Uneconomical. What's another word for this one? So first, let's say unusual, maybe unique. Or my handwriting is a bit off here. Let's just reduce the font to here. Okay. Here we are. I'm sorry because the slide is a bit small, but, and uneconomical can have something like expensive. Maybe expensive. Okay? Waste of money can be another choice. So uneconomical means it will not get you a profit or so. Unnecessary, okay? No one needs it. No one wants it. What about the second one? Before the postage stamp was introduced, who usually paid for the delivery of a letter? Remember to mark the keywords. The first one here, the introduction of postage stamps was considered. So the introduction here, right? And what the opinion about postage stamps was, what was it considered? What about the second one? Before the postage stamp was introduced, who usually, I'm talking about usually, paid for the delivery of a letter? Okay? These are the keywords that you need to focus on. Okay? Who usually paid for the delivery of a letter? The sender, the receiver, and the post office. I'm pretty sure all of this, all of the choices are clear. What about the third one? When was the single rate for a stamp introduced? The single rate for a stamp. By the way, rate is price. Okay? The meaning of rate here is price. Alright? Rate here means price. So 1834, 1839, 1840. Before stamps, the cost of sending a letter depended on where it was going, how long it took to arrive, and how much it weighted. Alright? So it depends on the destination, the duration, or the weight. Of course, these are other expressions here. Let me write them down. Destination. Okay? Can be where it was going. Destination. Perhaps its duration, which is the second choice. Alright? Or weight. Who knows? What about number 5? The process of stamp production is expensive, difficult, time consuming. Okay? Be very careful of the difference between difficult and time consuming. A process can be very easy, but it's very time consuming. Maybe like making a cake, okay? Or leaving clothes out to dry, okay? how to leave clothes out to dry? Just hang them. Okay? Just hang them and wait for them to dry. It's very easy. Just two clips, okay, on the clothes and it's over. But it's very time consuming because you won't be able to collect them until maybe next day or so. As opposed to difficult, which needs specific skill, special skill. So, without further ado, let's listen to the recording associated with these questions and then move on to the next part.
You will hear two students talking about the topic for an economic history assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Of course, during this time, you will be reading the questions in this time. Okay, so do your best to read the questions as quickly as possible, marking the keywords.
Now listen and answer questions 1 to 5.
Okay, so I forgot the cost of sending a letter depended on, okay, the cost here, the process of stamp production, the process. Alright, so these are the keywords. I really hope I didn't here. Okay, so just mark them without crossing out the word and play the recording.
What topic are you researching for your economic history assignment?
Well, I've decided to look at the history of postage stamps.
Oh, that's different.
Yes, well, postage stamps played an important role in the development of 19th century commerce. They were quite a novel idea at the time of their introduction.
Oh, were they really?
Yes, because, you know, before they had stamps, the addressee, that's the person receiving the letter, not the sender, used to have to pay for the letter to be delivered. And, of course, if he didn't want to pay...
Or maybe if he couldn't pay.
Yeah, if he couldn't pay, he could refuse to accept the letter and, in effect, the post office had to cover the cost. So, they came up with the brilliant idea of having a prepaid stamp, which the sender always paid for.
So, when was the first stamp produced?
Well, the idea for an adhesive postage stamp, one that you could stick onto your letter, was initially devised in Great Britain around 1834, but it took the government until 1839 to accept the idea. And the first stamp was produced in 1840, and that's when they introduced the uniform price.
And how much was that?
It was 1 penny for each letter.
No matter where the letter was being sent within Britain?
Yes, that's right. Because previously each letter was charged not so much by size or by weight, but according to its destination.
Oh, really?
The first stamp was called the penny black. If you've got one these days, they're worth an absolute fortune.
They're always bringing out new stamps though, aren't they? So I figure they must be quite easy and economical to produce.
Well, yes, but more to the point, it's quite a lengthy business, because there are so many stages to go through.
And that concludes questions 1 to 5. As you can see, it's very easy once you understand what each question is talking about and exactly what what the speakers are referring to or what the speakers mean. Once what the speakers mean, okay, with their conversation. So let's just quickly check the answers. So the introduction of postage stamps was considered novel. Novel was the key word here. Novel means unique, a novel idea. Here, let's just mark it a bit better. Okay. So it was unusual. Alright, so that's the answer. Unusual. It's not uneconomical, it's not unnecessary, but it was unique. Novel. Novel is a very important word here. Alright, some people even say the novelty of something wears quickly. So let's say, for example, that the entire world is used to bringing normal phones. Okay, using these normal buttoned phones here, phones with buttons, right? Then suddenly a phone or a smartphone with a complete screen, something like this, came up. It became novel. It became something new. What about the second one? Before the postage stamp was introduced, who usually paid for the delivery of a letter? Be very careful here. They said two things, of course not the sender, but either the receiver or the post office. They said that the receiver sometimes may, or in situations, the receiver can refuse to receive the letter. Okay, he can refuse to receive the letter, and that means that the post office will need to pay. But in most situations, usually the receiver pays it. When was the single rate for a stamp introduced? The answer is 1840, because they said that they have not been accepted, or sorry, they have not been printed in something until 1840, and that's when the single price, okay, or the single rate for a single stamp was introduced, 1 penny. Before stamps, the cost of sending a letter depended on where it was going, the destination. And the process of stamp production, he said, is it expensive? Is it difficult? She said, not exactly, okay, but it takes a lot of time. It's because it has many stages. Let's move on to the next set of questions here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's circle the questions here, as we are used to doing. And then read quickly. Stamps must represent aspects of national interest, like pictures of people from something, specific examples of wildlife, such as Australian something. There are no something on Australian or British stamps. Favorite topic in Britain is something. So this is a bit of a complicated text, okay? It's a bit difficult, all right? But hopefully we'll be able to solve them together. Again, stamps must represent aspects of national interest. What's national interest? Something that all of the people of a country maybe know or are interested in. For example, Britain is, or football, I'm talking about football as in soccer, okay, football is a national sport in Great Britain, which means that it has, or Britain might have lots of stamps that have football players on them, maybe. What about Australia? Australia might have stamps of the Sydney Theatre, okay? This large, beautiful building in Sydney, Australia, which is on the sea, and I think it's the Concert Hall of Sydney, something like that. All right? The American stamps might have a Statue of Liberty. All right? So pictures of people from somewhere, and specific examples of wildlife, such as the Australian something. There's something Australian, okay? And there are no something on Australian or British stamps. Who or what is not featured on these stamps? A favorite topic in Britain is something. All right? So let's carry on very quickly.
Before you hear the next part of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
First, they have to choose the subjects.
So what kind of topics are acceptable?
Well, the most important thing is that they must be of national interest, something that represents the country in some way and which is highly recognizable at a glance. So, for instance, characters from books are popular, or you often find examples of national animals and birds.
Like the kangaroo on Australian stamps.
Yes, exactly. And in the UK, you can't have pictures of people who are alive. Well, with the notable exception of members of the British royal family. So no living people ever appear on Australian or British stamps.
Well, that seems a bit stupid.
Well, not really. The policy is under review, I believe, but many stamp enthusiasts see good reason for keeping it that way, to avoid the possibility of people in power using their influence to get onto the stamps.
Oh, I suppose that's a point.
One favourite topic in the UK is kings and queens. For instance, King Henry VIII, famous for his 6 wives, appeared on a British stamp together with a stamp featuring each of his wives.
Some of the stamps are pretty unusual, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to skip for question 10 now, because it's on a different page. Here you can see an example of 3 months. I apologize if the picture is unclear. In the first month, you can see a picture of people sitting at a cafe, I think, and they're sitting in parallel seats. Right? So it's like it can be like a small seat here, and then there's a table and a seat there. People sit here and here, something like that, right?